Thank you. I want to thank my friend, Senator Whitehouse, such a great leader on this issue. And I'm really glad that Senator Inhofe came down to the floor, my good friend. And he deserves a thank you because he has laid out why he denies the obvious. And that is that this planet is warming and it's due to human activity. And frankly, it's his right to turn his back on 97% of the scientists, just like the deniers did when we learned that it was, in fact, smoking that was causing an epidemic of lung cancer. I respect him. I'm glad he came down here, but I have to say I'm sad that we haven't seen any Republicans come down here except for Senator Inhofe, who has written a whole book on this, and we know his views, but we don't see anybody else. But let me tell you what we know from our other colleagues. Let's just take the Speaker, the Republican Speaker of the House, who said, when asked about climate change, it kind of has a different view than Senator Inhofe. So does Senator Rubio. This is what they said when asked, what do they think about climate? Their answer is, well, I'm not a scientist. What do I know? Well, right, you're not. Why don't you listen then to 97% of the scientists if you admit you're not a scientist? And, you know, what if Speaker Boehner or Senator Rubio or the others who are these deniers, and they're now saying they're not a scientist. Let's say they went to the doctor and the doctor said, look, you've got a serious liver condition, and I have a new drug that's been created to cure your disease, and I don't think we should wait, and let's go. And you didn't say, well, I want a second opinion, I want to go to another doctor. You said, you know what, I'm not a doctor, I don't think so. Does that make sense? What if you went to a dentist, and the dentist said, Senator, you have an abscess. It's pretty straightforward. I can fix it. If you let it go, you're going to get an infection. I don't know what could happen. Now, if I said to the dentist, I'm going to check with a couple other people, fine. But no, if I said, oh, I'm not a dentist, I don't think so. Or as my friend told me before, you take your car in for a repair, and they say, you know, something wrong with the brakes here, and we got to tighten those brakes. Can you leave the car here? Well, I'm not a repairman. 97% of the scientists, they're all peer-reviewed, are telling us what is happening to our planet. And here's the thing about these deniers. If they want to jump off the climate change cliff and just go by themselves, that's their choice. But they're going to take everybody with them, okay? My grandkids, your grandkids, and their kids. And we're just not going to let it happen. Senator Whitehouse isn't going to let it happen. I'm not going to let it happen. The president isn't going to let it happen. And I'm going to spend the rest of my time just summing it up by refuting some of the things Senator Inhofe said. So I'd ask unanimous consent if I might put my entire statement into the record.
Without objection.
So I have to say, the president deserves a lot of credit for his plan. And what's really interesting is it's supported by 70% of the American people who, quote, think the federal government should limit the release of greenhouse gases from existing power plants in an effort to reduce global warming. Now that includes, amazingly, 57% of Republicans, 79% of Democrats, 76% of independents support the president's plan because they're not stupid, they're smart. Look what happens when you throw the environment under the bus. People walk around in air that you can see. You don't want to see the air. You don't want to wear a mask when you go outside. And the American people get it. And then my colleague said, oh, they're going to scare you. They're going to scare you. There's no problem with carbon in the air. There's no problem at all. Well, let me tell you who disagrees with Senator Inhofe, who disagrees with the Republicans. The American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Thoracic Society, the American Public Health Association, the American Lung Association, the National Nurses Union, all have statements that say climate change is a threat to public health. Who are the people going to listen to? Us, politicians, or people who spend every day of their life waking up in the morning and thinking of ways to protect our health? Yeah, if the deniers want to jump off the cliff and they only hurt themselves, I suppose that's their option. But they're taking my kids, and they're taking all the kids of our American families. And we're not going to let that happen. I will close with this. The senator from Oklahoma started to say this is going to kill you, it's going to raise your prices of your electricity, jobs are going to be lost. He cited a Chamber of Commerce study that has been so rebuffed that the Washington Post gave it their most Pinocchios. In other words, 4 Pinocchios to the Chamber of Commerce because they were responding to something that never came about. This plan of the president's makes a whole lot of sense. He has courage to do it. We're going to stand behind it. And yeah, they're going to try to repeal it, the Republicans. But let me give them the bad news from their perspective. They've sent over dozens and dozens of environmental riders. I think I want to say over 90. I'll check it for the record. How much? Over 90. We have beat back every single one of them. And for colleagues to stand there and say, Sheldon Whitehouse and I are doing this because it's an election year, that is a joke. We've been doing this for years. I dare say Sheldon Whitehouse has made more speeches on the floor than anyone on this subject. And I started, and when I had the gavel for the first time in '07, I had to fight to keep it in my hand because guess what? We had Al Gore before the committee, remember? And Senator Inhofe was so distressed he tried to grab the gavel. We have a kind of a funny picture in our office in which I said elections have consequences, and they do. But to say that we're doing this because there's some donor is the most absurd thing I've ever heard. I'll put in the record a statement by Lyndon Johnson. This shows how far back Democrats have warned about this. This is amazing. My staff discovered this. Air pollution, he said, this is 1965, is no longer confined to isolated places. He says this generation has altered the composition of the atmosphere on a global scale with a steady increase in carbon dioxide from the burning of fossil fuels. So don't come on this floor and say suddenly the Democrats care about this because it's an election year. You know? It's ridiculous. We've known about this for years. We've been trying to get the attention of our colleagues. I want to thank Senator Whitehouse. He and I signed a letter with several others inviting our colleagues down. All we got was Senator Inhofe, not that we don't love him and we appreciate the fact he came over here, but we have to now assume he speaks for everybody on that side, which is scary because they've turned their back on the doctors, they've turned their back on the scientists, and they've turned their backs on the American people. Thank you, Senator Whitehouse, and I would yield back to you.